and welcome to Encouraging Leadership, conversations that mobilize today's women leaders, with your host, Ann Miner. Meet leaders who share their observations, knowledge, insight, and perspectives to mobilize you to apply your own leadership in business and in life. Here's your host, Ann Miner.
Hello and welcome to Encouraging Leadership, conversations to mobilize today's women leaders. I have with me today Belinda Pruyne, a leading authority in guiding global executives and visionary entrepreneurs across Fortune 1000 and startup companies to extraordinary personal growth and professional success. As founder and CEO of Business Innovation Group, a strategic coaching and consulting firm, Belinda leverages 3 decades of award-winning expertise in how to advance the mission-critical goals of organizations and inspiring leadership by tapping into a person's unique brilliance and authenticity. Belinda, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's get started right away with what type of leadership is needed in the business world today?
That's such a great question. Truthfully, the bottom line of that is a big picture leader. And I want to take a second to kind of rewind what we've been living through, from the agricultural age to the industrial age to the informational age. Daniel Pink says we're in the conceptual age. Aaron Hurst called it the purpose economy. I say we are in the age of the meaningful connection. Right? Consumers are willing to open their wallets again, but they're not going to open their wallets for what was window dressing in the past. They want it to have real meaning. And consumers are looking for that, and so are employees. So as a big picture leader, you're someone that looks beyond the bottom line, right? You recognize that their role is bigger than just meeting their numbers. It's developing their employees' unique strengths and helping their employees to meet the specs of their position, but then what else do they bring to the table that may be unique to them that no one else will, or no one else will in the way that they do? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So tell us more. You've given us the kind of the high points there, but let's dive in and learn a bit more.
Okay. Well, one of the first principles of being a big picture leader is to be unashamedly you. And people look at me and go, well, Albert, are you crazy? What does that mean? What I mean by that is you have to be willing to honor all of who you are, right? If you think about the leaders that you're inspired by, are you inspired by people that do same old, they kind of do, be, or act like everybody else out there? Or are you inspired by the person that actually took a stand for what's important to them? They honor all of who they are, right? They're unashamedly themselves. And I know for me, the answer is the latter. I want somebody who can show me a better way or inspire me to tap into something within myself that I might not have valued, but it has great importance in the company or in business today. Somebody that's going to help me do something beyond the cookie cutter, right? I want people to stop waiting politely in line or passively in line as the person in front of them goes up the next rung of that corporate ladder, and you go, yeah, all right. Because, no, I want you to create your own corporate ladder, bring greater value to the company and greater fulfillment to you, because that's where sustainability happens. It's also where innovation happens. It's where things are created that have never been done before or never been done in that way before. And it's not because you have a letter at the end of your name or you went to school for business. It's because you're honoring all of who you are. And the reason I know that that's so valuable is because that's my story. I have a degree in theater from NYU, which is lovely. I loved my time at NYU, but it did absolutely nothing to prepare me for business in the traditional sense. Yet when I went into business, my dad was concerned, oh God, his baby girl's going into business. How's she going to do this with a degree in theater? And he gave me a piece of advice that I took with me through my entire career, and it helped me I ultimately did create my own corporate ladder. I created a position that didn't exist in my company or the industry at that time. And the thing that's so cool is it didn't make me better than anybody. It just made me different. And because I was different, I got noticed. And when I got noticed, I could create opportunity, ultimately doing what I said a moment ago, bringing greater value to the company and greater fulfillment to me. So it's a missing link that is in business today. Cookie cutters are not going to do it anymore. That's why Daniel Pink says we're in the conceptual age. We're creating new. Well, you have to be open. You can't be copying the person in front of you and expect that to happen for you. A little more info for you?
Yes, that is so interesting. That, it sounds to me like your own definition of leadership might not include the word follow. That you don't necessarily require followers.
Yeah, and you don't buck the system just to buck the system, right? You buck the system with purpose, right? There's a reason behind why you believe it needs to be done differently. It's like when Howard Schwartz, I believe, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on his last name, who was the head of the CEO of Starbucks, right? He went in there and he had a passion and a purpose. And when he stepped out, that passion and purpose wasn't followed anymore. And they were going for the bottom line. They were just looking at the numbers. And that's when Starbucks started to tank. And he went back in and said, no, we've got to stay on track with the principles of what we created this company to be, and it elevated and came right back, right? So you don't buck the system just to buck the system. He had a purpose behind it. The gentleman that founded Monster, right? It was all about creating greater value for that person who's looking for a job, helping them do that. And when the new CEO came over, he focused all on the bottom line. And it was all about money. And Monster went from being one of the top 20 most visited websites in the world to dropping their shares by over 43% until a new CEO came in and brought that purpose back into it, right? So you're not bucking the system just to buck it. There's a reason that you are, and that reason is what's going to move that company or your position or your department forward.
It's so interesting when we review those that led to the bottom line or from the bottom line, that the financial performance of the company actually was negatively impacted by having that as the focus rather than what would have been anticipated, which would be an improvement in the bottom line.
Yes. And I love it because it's one of the big misconceptions there is about leadership out there. I've got to get the numbers. I've got to do this for the board. No, you really don't. You need to grow the company. And I call it when profit meets principle. Because when profit meets principle, whoa, the world becomes your oyster. When it's all about profit, you're very myopic in view. You're missing opportunities. You're not innovating your company, your department, your position. You are just stuck in that track of same old, same old. And that's the kiss of death in business today. Industries are having to remake themselves. And if they stick to what's been done before, it won't move forward. They won't remain relevant. They'll become another story of what didn't work. And that's not what you're looking for today at all.
Well,
right?
Absolutely not. And it does remind us of Einstein's definition of insanity. I'm expecting you'll get a different outcome, even though you're doing the same thing you've done over and over and over.
It's that. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, it reminds me of that. I'm from the Midwest, right? That old Midwestern work ethic. If it's not working, just work harder. It's like, no, because you just work yourself into the ground. So you're absolutely right.
I was asked recently about Fortune, we'll call them Fortune 1000, but they might be in the 500. The question I was asked was something like this. What keeps happening to that organization? You know, if they have all of this, they speak and their website professes their vision and their values and their anticipation and all of these grand things, and yet the company seems to cycle through it almost gets there, and then there's a decline, and then there's some change of strategy, and then there's, they almost get there, and then there's a decline. And my thought on that was that, first of all, those organizations are, as you say, bottom line driven. They have a quarterly target to meet. They're striving to deliver shareholder value in a 3-month period, which is a wink of time, actually. I'm sure you would agree.
Yeah.
And then when it's not working, as we've seen in other organizations, in something like 24 to 28 months, you change up the leader. And then you see a change, which sounds like it cycles through the type of leadership that you're advocating, and then a bottom line leader, and back to the, sort of in the figure 8, round and around we go.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So how do you see us breaking that pattern?
Well, it's educating, for starters, the people that are on the board, the stockholders that are kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes that are saying, no, right? A great example, Jim Stengel, who's an amazing marketer, was the head of marketing for P&G at the time. And he was asking the brands, the individual brands, to create an ad that could go into the Super Bowl. Now, P&G is not known for advertising that goes into the Super Bowl. So this was a stretch, to be sure. And everybody did it, and, an ad was chosen and it was run in the Super Bowl. But the thing that didn't change was the metrics by which the brand managers were being judged. So they were being asked to do more innovative work to connect with the consumer, but the metrics by which they were being judged were not changing. So they weren't willing to take that risk, because if they didn't hit these old numbers, they weren't going to be a success and they would ultimately get fired. So the risk factor was too big. So to address some of what you're dealing, Jim obviously made changes, right? But you need the change needs to come from the top down, and you need to look at all the pieces of that. And CVS is a wonderful example of this. When they decided they no longer wanted to be known as a pharmacy, but as a health organization. And they had a mission that everybody was to live by, and no one was paying attention. And if you asked them the mission of the company, nobody could tell you what it was, to your point. So they started there, and they came up with a mission, and they gave it to everybody in a laminated thing that could be put in their wallets or their pockets, so that they would always have it handy as they learned it. Then they had to change all of the principles, all of the procedures, all of how the company was run to support that. And I'm sure one of the first things they did on an external basis was to recognize we can't be seen as a health organization and sell cigarettes. So they had to have financial analysts come in and say, we're about to lose billions of income. How can we do this and still be financially sustainable? We had to train people in the front that had to learn how to communicate with a disgruntled employee. So they had to bring these principles into every corner, every nook and cranny of that company in order for it to be sustainable. So it's not something that you can kind of just have as be a platitude. You have to actually live it. So when companies tell you customer service is our number one thing, and their return policy is you have 3 days to do it, and you have to have this and you have to have that, customer service really isn't their number one priority, right? So things have to be in alignment, and you have to walk your talk, as that saying goes, in order for it to be sustainable. And there are companies out there that are doing this that over time will become that gold standard and loosen the grip, the fear of, no, we can't change that because we know if we do 1 + 2, it always equals 3, to recognize that, no, we can actually get to that number a little different way. Does that make sense?
It does. And of course, it will take, newsflash, it'll take more than 1 quarter, more than a 3 month.
Yes, it will. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
You have to have that eye on the goal at the end, and have realistic benchmarks that you can gauge. And you also have to have the agility to adjust, because the plan that you have on paper makes complete sense in a linear world. But when you begin to live it, you go, wow, you know what? That's really not connecting with our employees as deeply as we thought. What can we do that would shift that? So you've got to be able to course correct along the way.
Indeed. So you have mentioned one of the misconceptions about leadership. What are some of the others?
People think that to be a good leader, it's like when you're told that you want to speak up in meetings and be heard. People tend to get really loud, and I won't do that now because it would blast our listeners' ears, right? So you just speak louder, and you think that's what it means to be confident. It's like, no, that just means to be loud, right? Mm-hmm. So there are a group of people that think leaders is all about doing it my way, and that's not being a leader. It's like a perfectionist. The downside of being a perfectionist is you're either going to browbeat your team to do it your way, or you're going to ignore your team and do it yourself. Now, one of the pros of, the pros and cons, one of the pros of being a perfectionist tells me as your boss, you're going to do whatever it takes to get it done, right? So you need to be really conscious of what you're bringing to the table. But a leader today is not about being that dictator, telling them what to do and making sure they do it. It's actually sharing the vision for that particular launch, goal, product, department, company, whatever that is, with them, inspiring them to care, to push beyond, right, the obvious of the 3 steps that we know we have to take, and then encourage them to bring what they uniquely have to that table so that the solution becomes exponentially more successful than it would in the myopic focus. So leadership is not about just telling it like it is. It's actually creating an environment that allows, right, because I'm all about big picture leaders. It's all about creating opportunities and solutions that are much farther reaching than they would have been had I followed a single path.
Well, that speaks to the old-fashioned belief that leaders have to have all the answers, that the leader is the one who knows.
Yep. Yeah, a good idea can come from anywhere. It can come from the mailroom. It can come from the C-suite. A good idea is not dictated by the position you hold, but by the openness that you have to looking at what's going on. Absolutely. And there's a stat out there that Gallup put out that said the reason 70% of the turnover that's going on in businesses today is due to the fact that they don't believe in their leaders, because their leaders are saying one thing and their actions are saying another. So there's a leadership deficit. There's people that are confused as to what it means to be a leader. And in fairness to people within companies, most of the time when they get promoted to a higher position, but nobody ever takes the time to tell them what's expected of them in that position and what are the techniques or the tools, the resources, the approaches that you can take to be highly effective in that position. So it's a little bit like bumper cars. Everybody's out there trying certain things and they're doing what they know. And I love the Maya Angelou saying that says, when you know better, you do better. Well, let's help our employees know better so they do better, and ultimately so will the company as well. Right? So there's an expectation around that. I agree with
that more. As you know, the Acacia Institute was founded specifically to create exceptional women leaders for 21st century organizations. And there's a number of points in that statement. To be exceptional is to be different and better than what has gone before. The fact that we have focused on women is a conversation for a show all by itself. Certainly we are looking for diversity of thought, diversity of strengths, diversity of approaches in all of our teams. The leading for 21st century organizations is intended to capture the fact that in today's world, in today's, ever-changing, so rapidly changing world, expecting that one person would have all of the answers is, of course, ludicrous.
Right.
And so the need for leaders to be prepared, as you've suggested, to be trained and developed and have emotional intelligence to appreciate that leadership is not a static state, but it's a process, it's an evolution, and that you must have the ability to influence and inspire and to get people to bring, as you've said, their best. Bring the very best you have. Believe that the seed of a fabulous idea can come from what might potentially sound like, today's dumb question, but building on it, bringing everybody else's strengths can be very, very impactful.
Yeah, take that idea and attach it to a tangible business outcome. That's the big key to when you're sharing an idea with somebody. You can share an idea and they might not be able to connect the dots. You need to do that for them. So take that idea and connect it to a tangible business outcome or result. And all of a sudden they'll go, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. Right? So again, I call it finishing the sentence. So don't just share your idea and tell me why it's important by showing me, by attaching it to that outcome, right? Which is really powerful. And to your point on women, Anne, I just love that you do this because at 32, I was the only woman in the boardroom. And I, again, coming from a theater background, I'm like, do I have to burp and fart and tell dirty jokes to be taken seriously or wear a pinstripe suit, right? And I don't know where I personally got the courage, but I said, no, I get to do it my way. And in all honesty, it may have taken them a little bit longer to understand the level of efficacy that I was bringing, the importance or the value that I was bringing. But the CFO called me one time and he looked at me and he goes, I'll be damned. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, no, really, I'll be damned. I'm like, Steve, I have no idea what you're talking about. And he goes, I bet I've given you everything you ever asked for, which was not true. But I looked at him and I said, well, which business thing did I bring to you that was not a sound business decision? And he goes, you're really not the wallflower. Some of those people in there think you are you? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I went, Steve, just because I don't play the game the way you do, don't make the mistake to think I'm not in the game because that's foolish. And he goes, touche. I walked out of his office and I just had this huge, I have goosebumps now. I went, yes, I get to do it my way. And it still adds value. I don't have to take on a different persona, something that's not true or authentic to me. I get to be unashamedly me. I get to add greater value to the company, greater fulfillment to me, and get the recognition that I ultimately wanted to get but didn't know how to achieve. So I love that you've created this platform that gives women an opportunity to understand you don't have to wear the pinstripe suit. You don't have to play the game the way they do. Be true to you and committed to the end result of achieving your goals in your way, and you can and will change the world. Love that. Love it. Thank you.
So have you crystallized for us in a single sentence the key to being a powerful leader in today's shifting and changing world?
I love that. The key to being a powerful leader in the shifting tides of the world today. You have to be willing to be the truest definition of a big picture leader. You have to be willing to be unashamedly you and take a stand for what you believe in, even though you will be ridiculed, because you will. People will say you're crazy because your vision scares them. So when I say big picture leader, I'm looking beyond the bottom line. I'm looking at developing deeper loyalties to those employees so they become walking billboards. And there's a line wanting to work, at the door wanting to work at the company. And what we do for the employees directly connects with our consumers. Our message, our actions are consistent. So it's that big picture leader. I know that's not one sentence, but it's the big picture leader that goes beyond the bottom line and is willing to be unashamedly themselves. That would be the sentence.
And that's a fabulous sentence in response to what was a huge challenge I know that I threw at you. Now, I understand, I understand that you actually have a way that our listeners could find out if they are big picture thinkers. Would you like to tell them about it?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. I do. I have the principles of being a big picture leader available online at beunashamedlyyou.com. Again, that's beunashamedlyyou.com. And you can go there and download these principles to see, are you living these principles? Is this the type of leader that you're being? Because I firmly believe that big picture leaders are what we need to take us into this next age of success in business. So get these principles, and if they click with you and you're like, I'm doing them, rock on, play out full. And if you're not, start looking at where you can bring them into your career, into your business, so that you too can be a big picture leader where the spotlight shines on you. You are the person people are looking to follow, to be inspired by, and encouraged to improve who they are. And then you can always go to my website, which is businessinnovationgroup.com, and connect with me that way as well. But the other way, you get a free gift.
Right, and Belinda, I wonder if we shouldn't just spell out the Be Unashamedly You site. And I'm going to let you do that. It has lots of letters.
I will do that. I thought to do that as well. So BE is Be Unashamedly. UNASHAMEDLY. And then another YOU.com. So again, it's BEUNASHAMEDLY
Great, thank you.
And if for some reason that doesn't work for you, you can just reach out to info@businessinnovationgroup.com and we'll get it sent to you.
Terrific. And I am sure there will be listeners from today's show who will take you up on that offer and hope that they will see a potential path to leadership that looks a little different and looks over the horizon to where we need to go and where we need to be as we are all moving into the further years of the 21st century. So, Belinda, thank you so very much for being with us today. I always enjoy talking with you, and I appreciate your, challenge to all of us to be unashamedly ourselves and to bring our best, to inspire others, and to move our organizations forward, always understanding that the purpose of business is to generate a profit, but realizing that there's a number of connections that include our employees, include our customers or consumers, that include our leadership and our community, all to the impact on the bottom line. And thus, when you do the right things, when we know better and we do better, everything looks better.
Yeah. Beautifully put. Beautifully put.
Well, thank you.
It's been an honor to be here.
Yes, and I'm sure that we'll have you back and talk more about leadership and mobilizing today's women leaders as we all move forward. Listeners, thank you for being with us. We'll look forward to having you join us every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you for listening to Encouraging Leadership. To learn more about our host, Ann Miner, and the Acacia Institute, please visit acaciainstitute.com. Join us next week at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, for more encouraging leadership. In the meantime, be courageous.